All right, so you want to get a time lapse. Let's go over if that actually is a good decision and if this color is the right one for you, because apparently colors matter in this run. All right, so my main comparisons are going to be MVP plastic, which I know this is Axiom, it's a different manufacturer, but they're pretty close. So I'm going to use a Relativity, which is actually a 14 speed, but comparing the rim to that compared to the rim of this is probably a good benchmark. And as far as speed goes, I'm going to be using Grace's and a D2, which to me fly very similar to what this should fly in essence, because it is very similar in numbers. And all the discs I'm testing are my favorite bomber discs, so they definitely have a good amount of glide, which this definitely should be with a 12.5 -1. All right, let's see how it throws. All right, so there's a little bit of left to right wind, so that might play a little bit of a factor. So I'm trying to go a little bit Anheuser for this release. See very well, but that held its flight super well. It definitely had a little bit of stability, but it managed to stay straight for probably 320, which is very good for what I'm looking for. All right, so probably my closest thing is going to be this Grace. It has definitely been a little bit of an overstable Grace for me, which I think the time lapse will be. Oh. All right, so I kind of choked that release a bit. Let's give it one more. It'll be Grace. So you can definitely tell that Graces have a little bit more turn to them. But overall, the distance was pretty similar. Just a lot more stability in that time lapse. All right, D2 next. This is also a pretty beat up D2, so it probably will glide a little bit further. I actually ripped that one. And then lastly, we have the Relativity. Again, this is a 14 speed, but the rim is probably very similar to what the time lapse will be for you. All right, so I'm gonna give it another try with a little bit more room to glide. It was actually probably about the second furthest disc that I threw, but there still wasn't too much glide to it. I'm gonna start with it first. We also have a little bit of a headwind. Again, I don't think you can really tell that much on camera, but that held its line very well with the wind. You would think that with the kind of overstable disc, it would go hard left, but it kind of just stayed straight the entire flight. Next up, a Grace. You can see that one carried way more to the right, and with the wind, you kind of expect it to flip, but the time lapse did not flip whatsoever. And again, that flipped a lot. But still, that little bit of flip does give you more distance. So if you're looking for a max distance driver, I don't think this is gonna be the disc for you unless you're a bomber like Simon. All right, so I threw that on a little bit of hyzer, but it still stayed very straight, which is probably the most similar to the time lapse. It is a Kristin Tattar Orbit Grace, so it definitely has a little bit more stability to it. And just a brief rundown about the colors, because it does actually matter. This is something that I did not know when I bought the disc, but the purple is the flippy disc, the blue, gray, and teal are stable to straight flying, and the red, white, and yellow are all beefy. So I got the most beefy run of time lapses, which totally explains why it did not flip at all and had a very stable flight. All right, so in conclusion, honestly, I would say that time lapse has to be the most similar to an Orbit Grace, which is probably my favorite disc, so I'm not saying it's a bad thing, just probably the most closest comparison. Honestly, I think with the slight bit of overstability, it is kind of hard to say it fits a new slot in my bag. I think I probably will throw it because it does feel nice out of the hand, has a very slim rim, which is nice, and I can definitely tell I get consistency with that disc, whereas other discs I kind of just hope and pray that I get it straight, but that seems to hold its line very well. So I would give the time lapse 8 out of 10. So I hope you guys found that helpful, and be sure to comment down below if you will pick up a time lapse yourself. Wild Run signing out, peace.